Really thrilled with today's guest. I've been a big fan for years. This is actually the first time we're chatting. Jake Tapper is, I'm going to do this. I can't believe in my research, nobody has said this, a Jake of all trades. I mean, has that, because when you really, the combination of, he's got his third novel coming out, All the Demons Are Here, which followed 2 New York Times bestseller, Hellfire's Club and The Devil May Dance. He is also a nonfiction best-selling New York Times writer. He is, of course, the host of the very, very, very popular Lead every day at 4 p.m. on CNN. He also co-hosts with Dana Bash, State of the Union on Sundays. He's the lead Washington anchor for CNN. He's one of the most important, a cartoonist. He's one of the most important kind of voices in journalism today. I'm thrilled to talk to him. How you doing, man?
Donny, I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm a fan of yours as well. It's really fun to be able to talk to you.
All right. The most important thing we're going to start with is what you and I have in common. And, I always search for where's the common ground. And this one's going to throw you a little bit. You and I both went on one date, me post-scandal, you pre-scandal with Monica Lewinsky.
Is that right?
That's right. We both have the dubious distinction. You did it way before she was Monica Lewinsky that we know. Obviously, before your marriage, before your kids.
Weeks before.
Jesus.
I went on the date. A date with her in December. I think it was. When did the scandal break?
98.
Okay, so I went on a date with her in December 97, and then I went on vacation. She moved to New York.
Right.
And on vacation, I pick up the Caymanian Compass newspaper at the airport in Little Cayman, and I see this, and I can't even believe it.
I went out with her a number of years, maybe 10 years ago. It was just sad. She was just like so brutalized, and she was a victim in all this. And
100%.
She still hasn't. She has what I call the Michael Cohen problem, in that the very thing that defines them, they need to get away from, but they can't because it defines them, and it's their reason of their relevancy. And it's this very weird 360 thing that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, she's done a lot about bullying,
yes,
and cyberbullying, and she's really she produced a great HBO movie a year or two ago, and she looks amazing.
She's a beautiful woman. Beautiful woman.
Yeah, beautiful woman. She's I'm still friends with her. I don't know about you, but
we're friendly. I haven't spoken to her in a while, but I had to get that big data point out of the way. I mean, I think it was important to do that.
Mine was very innocent, Donny.
Same thing. Mine was too. Very innocent.
Because I'm a nice Jewish boy. So
I'm a nice Jewish boy also. You're a nice Jewish boy. Little known fact, born in Staten Island. Who would have thought?
That's true.
Grew up in Philly, but born in Staten Island. That one really threw me, I got to tell you.
Well, my dad, so during the Vietnam War, every doctor in the United States had to either be in the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, or the Peace Corps, or the Public Health Service. Mm-hmm. So my dad was in the Public Health Service at the hospital in Staten Island, and that's why I was born in Staten Island. I don't know that the people of Staten Island claim me.
No,
I'm sure they do.
They're kind of focusing on Pete Davidson more than you.
Pete Davidson and
Colin Jost.
Colin, they're probably a little hipper.
Speaking of hip, you had hippie parents that you kind of grew up with. At least what you describe them that way.
They definitely were progressive. I called them a hippie once, and my dad got really mad at me because he was not. He was a professional. He was paying his taxes. He was, but he was a serious progressive. He would march in rallies for civil rights against the Vietnam War. So I was just being lighthearted when I called them hippies, but they were definitely of the left, and definitely very socially conscious. And I don't know what your upbringing was like. We're probably roughly the same age, but I was definitely raised in a house aware of the Vietnam War and how bad it was that the country was sending our boys over there to fight this war that nobody supported anymore. I was very aware of Frank Rizzo, the bully mayor.
I was at Penn when Frank Rizzo was the mayor there during the whole move thing. I mean, he was a beast. I mean, he was an old school cop. They used to crack heads of guys in Philly. I mean, this was in the late 70s. It was no joke.
Yeah, and there was this infamous photo of him. He was a Democrat, by the way, for anybody listening. This is old school bully Democrats in the Mayor Daley mold. And there's an infamous picture of him arresting Black Panthers. He had come from an event, and he had
he was like stepping on them. Yeah, he was like on top of them, or so. It's a
nightstick tucked in his cummerbund.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, he was a brute.
Yeah, he was a
brute. So
I first want to talk about the book because I was just so fascinated to follow your story as as a novelist. Your new book is coming out. I think this is going to be breaking the 13th. So your book's been out for 2 days now. I'm going to predict,
great.
even though we're pre-selling, that it's already a New York Times bestseller. So we're going to.
Here it is. All the demons are here.
Okay. I love it. And I love the description in one of the publishers' thing. It says, the publisher says the book tours the underground 70s world of cults, celebrities, tabloid journalism, serial killers, disco, and UFOs. And of course, you follow, this is, you've been following created congressman and his wife, who now he's a senator. And this is about their 2 kids.
So Charlie Martyr, Congressman Charlie Martyr, Republican of New York, and his wife, Margaret, who's a zoologist, were the main characters of the first book, The Hellfire Club, which takes place in the 50s and during the McCarthy era.
McCarthy thing, yeah.
And then the next book is The Devil May Dance, and that takes place in the early 60s. They go out and they have to investigate the Rat Pack. So that's the Rat Pack era, the early 60s, 62. This book takes place in 1977, and Charlie and Margaret are in it, and they're big characters, but the main characters are their kids, Ike and Lucy. Ike is 20. He's an AWOL Marine. He's working for Evel Knievel in Montana.
I know. I love that. that one kind of threw me a little bit. He's working for Evel Knievel.
Well, you remember Evel Knievel.
Of course I remember it. Yes, big star.
Yeah, I mean, in the 70s, like huge figure in sports and entertainment. Anyway, so Ike works for Evel Knievel, and then Lucy, his older sister, she's 22. She works for a new newspaper. This British family has come to town to start a tabloid in D.C., the Washington Sentinel, because this is 1977 is also the era where
David Berkowitz and that year was crazy.
Summer of Sam.
Summer of Sam, crazy.
And the New York Post and the New York Daily News really rise in circulation, especially newsstand sales. And so it was a way for me to not only tell fun stories involving Studio 54 and the New York City blackout and Elvis dying and the rest and UFOs, but also to talk about the rise of tabloid journalism, which is something that we're all still living with in many ways.
I love that it's fiction, but then you introduce Woodward and Bernstein and Barry Goldwater, and you kind of go over this weird line between fiction and nonfiction.
Well, I started doing that in the first book with Joe McCarthy, and it was so much fun. And I had to, I'll be honest, I had to get comfortable with it. There was a real difference between the first draft and the second draft of the first book, because I had to be like, this is historical fiction. I can make it up. It's okay. And as long as I'm not doing anything that defames a real person or puts them in a light that is not believable or credible with who they really were, it's okay to do. So, I don't have Joe McCarthy stabbing a baby, right, or whatever, but I can have him drinking too much and being a jerk. So now I'm much more comfortable with it. Yeah, well, Woodward and Bernstein, as you know from meeting them, it's so fun to know them. Yeah. And so 1977, so yeah, they're in the second chapter. Lucy goes to the Senate dining room to meet her father, who's now a senator from New York. And Woodward and Bernstein, in their 20s, they're like Sinatra at the Sands, they're strutting around and telling Senator Charlie Martyr their stories. And for this, I just took a story that Bernstein told me on air, and I just took it and cut and pasted it and put it in the book.
How did you? I mean, you write. You had New York Times bestseller nonfiction, writing about the 2000 election. How do you then all of a sudden make that? I had a similar conversation with James Comey a couple of weeks ago, who's a novelist now also. How did you make that move and just all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm just going to start making shit up?
It was an escape. It was an escape. I'd always been interested in fiction. I went to film school after college.
USC, right?
USC, yeah. Right. I wrote a novel that wasn't published in my 20s, but through that novel I got an agent, and that's how my literary career began. And I always have just been interested in fiction in the same way your buddy Larry O'Donnell can do news and also fiction as well. And for me, it was just I'd wanted to do a story about Washington, D.C., given what I'd seen and what I'd learned about Washington, D.C. I wanted to do a story. The first book was I wanted to do a story about somebody who comes to Washington to do good, and then little by little makes compromises that gets them, until they're up to their neck in alligators. Like they just, from little by little by little. And I started writing one that took place in the modern day. And then I started writing one that took place in the colonial era. And then I just settled on the 1950s because I do find the McCarthy era so fascinating. And I'm also just a huge fan of President Eisenhower. So that was fun to do. It was fun. It's really, honestly, it's fun for me.
It's fun. And it's a diversion. And it's so different from your day job that it just takes you to a different place. Well,
don't you think it got really much more?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'm going to correct that. Yeah, because the nonfiction we're living through now, you could not write. If somebody tried to sell the last 8 years to a publisher, somebody said, no, it's too big. You can't pull it back. It's just not credible. It's not believable.
Donald Trump gets COVID, is medevaced to Walter Reed, and then comes back and gives that the whatever he did from the terrace of the White House. I mean, that's a scene that if you had submitted that,
you could take that out. It's ridiculous. Yeah,
they would say please stop sending us this hacky shit. You can't. It's too on the nose. But also just the nonfiction that we've been reporting on and living through has been really exhausting.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad for myself, but all I'm saying is it was fun to have a diversion.
You showed some of that it was a news story this week. I know you don't like to be in the news. You talk about the news instead of being in the news, but your exhaustion on air showed the other day, and Nicole Wallace did the same thing. This was when Trump was in the Cuban restaurant and was the adulation, and you were I think your words were this, enough of this, or, you kind of, how do you, it's such a tough line to dance because there are people, the obvious counter answer to that is, well, look, he is the leading presidential candidate.
Yeah.
He was just indicted. Sure. People are cheering him. As repulsive as that is, it's news. We got to show it. On the flip side, you go, wait a second, what are we doing here? We're running a campaign ad. We're not going to do this anymore. And it's a very tough line to navigate.
So I didn't have any problem with the adulation. I mean, he's beloved. We talk about that all the time on the show. I mean, it's fine. We don't show, as a matter of course, we don't show the many, many people running for president doing these OTRs, doing these little stops that are announced and meeting with voters. We don't do it. We don't do it for DeSantis. We don't do it for Nikki Haley. We don't do it for Tim Scott. So on one level, I was just well, why are we just showing this, entrance to exit? We don't do this for anyone else. Mm-hmm. And then also, this was a very serious and upsetting day. Yeah. I mean, a former president being arrested and arraigned for not treating national secrets with the respect and confidence they deserved. And he was obviously trying to change the subject. And I just thought, I didn't have a problem with airing it. Mm-hmm. I just thought okay, we've done it.
We got it. Yeah.
Move on. Because the standard, as on cable news is, this live thing comes in, you air it. I'm not talking about politicians now, but any sort of newsy event. And then once you're done, you just then you start. Oh, I dropped my mic. Then you just start re-airing it.
Yeah.
And I was just okay, we've seen it.
We got it.
That's enough. That's enough. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle. He's trying to turn it into a campaign ad. We've given the news value. Let's move on. I didn't think, I had no problem with airing it to begin with. It was just enough.
Just too much. So,
if Ron DeSantis comes and says, we're going to do an NPR at Versailles Cafe, are you going to air that too? I mean,
well, that was, look, the whole, I don't want to say, what's the word I want to use? One of the big brouhahas about early
all the Republicans had. Yeah.
There was basically, it was our friend Zucker who basically aired his first hour stump speech in 2015. And then what happened after that is, he went from a 0.1 to a 2.0, and he said, look, I'm rising the rating, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's one of the great media discussions of our time.
And Zucker, to his credit, is the only person I know in the media who has acknowledged we probably shouldn't have done that as much as we did. And, and again, it's just okay, if you're going to do it for person A, are you also going to do it for person B? And this isn't, honestly, Joe Biden was the last person on my mind when I was saying, let's turn. I was honestly more thinking of, this isn't fair to Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott. I mean, there are a lot of them running, and we need to be thinking in that vein again because we're in campaign season again.
Speaking of campaign season, I'm going to ask you a question that you're not going to have an answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. war game this out. How you think this plays out? As far as he's obviously any legal expert, as you have on all day long, as my friends at MSNBC is saying, this one is a pretty open shut case as far as cases go. Obviously, he's innocent until found guilty. But how do you see this playing out within the biggest sphere of things?
I'm so bad at predicting.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I would not be surprised if he were able to push any trial until after the election.
Yeah, especially with this judge in Florida. Yeah, especially with the judge in Florida.
With this judge in Florida, especially with, I mean, if I were him, I would try to delay this until after November 2024.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's, like, my understanding of the legal system is that's not actually an unreasonable thing to request.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. Now, that doesn't solve the problem of the other two likely indictments that are going to come his way. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. Look, I mean, I can only go by what this, you know, the polling shows. He's above and beyond the number one candidate to be the Republican
newest polls
nominee.
that came out today, we're taping this, 2 days after his indictment, hasn't moved the needle. It's just, it is, with his base, it does not, I don't subscribe to when people go, oh, it actually helps him. I don't believe that, because it doesn't help a swing voter. It doesn't help a suburban voter. It doesn't help a independent. But to his base, they just dig in deeper.
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One is a genuine adulation and affection that many of them do have for him, and they do. There is a love for him that I've only really seen with Obama. In terms of, I'm not comparing Obama and Trump. I'm not comparing the people who loved Obama with the people who loved Trump. But there was
the level of passion,
a level of celebrification. Just like, oh my God, this person, I love them so much.
Yeah.
And then there's also the right-wing ecosystem on Fox and Newsmax and the rest, where a lot of prominent voices, including a lot of Republican officials, are repeating what the Trump campaign wants them to repeat. This is all political. This is election interference. He had every right to hold those documents, and so on and so on. That's not the world in which you live. It's not the world in which I live. We live in worlds where, like, we listen to legal experts who are Democrats, who are Republicans, who are independents, and they're telling us this is very serious. Chris Christie is out there saying it's serious. Bill Barr is out there saying it's very serious. But generally speaking, that's not what consumers of conservative media are being told. So why would they think any different? Why would it affect his polling?
Try and explain. And I've asked this question too. Anytime I'm sitting with a bright person in our universe, I ask them the same question. Explain as best as you can the love for Donald Trump. If you're going to go to the guts of it, if you're going to go, this is what's happening here. This is beyond. Is it just pure anti-elitism? Is it disenfranchisement? Is it disenfranchisement? Wait, what's the word I'm looking for?
Disenfranchisement.
Disenfranchisement. Is it race? Is it all the above? What if you're going to kind of just behaviorist take on it? Explain to me, I landed from Mars, this passion, this love, this devotion to this man where there is no line that he can cross.
I mean, I think it's complicated and it's different for a lot of different people. Obviously, there's a racial dimension to it, given the things he says that are racist and racially offensive. But I don't think that's the main reason. I think the main reason is a lot of conservatives think that the Republican Party has sold them out, and they've felt this way for decades. Sold them out for immigration reform, sold them out for jobs going overseas, and the like. And I think there is, and by the way, I think they have some legitimate grievances there. I mean, I get it 100%. NAFTA was bipartisan, right? I mean, like, and to a degree, a lot of, and actually most favored nation status for China was probably a much bigger issue. But the United States government did let jobs go overseas because it was more profitable for corporations to be able to send jobs overseas. And we became a consumer society more than a manufacturing society. So I think that's one of them, even though I don't know that necessarily everybody would be able to articulate it in that way. But they know that something's gone wrong. They know that jobs have left. There was that great series in the Philadelphia Inquirer in the early 90s called America, What Went Wrong, that long preceded Donald Trump entering politics, but really diagnosed a lot of the reasons why people, I think that he has their back on China, on Mexico, on NAFTA, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the reality of it might be quite different, but I do think there is a degree to which people think that. I think there's also, look, he's an entertainer, and he's very gifted at entertaining his base. They love him. He is never boring to them. He disrupts the status quo, which I'm sure you would agree could stand some disrupting. So I think there's just a lot of this stuff. And there's some darker stuff too.
I never saw the dark. It was interesting. I was a friend of Trump, and what that means is, because he has no real friends, is that he used to do my old CNBC show. They did The Apprentice at my old agency a few times. I lived in one of his buildings. So everything with him is transactional. So I was quote unquote a friend. I never saw the evil in him. And Howard Stern would say the same thing, and Al Sharpton would say the same. You knew he was a lounge act. You knew you didn't want to be in a foxhole with him. You knew you didn't want to do business with him. But I never saw that darkness in him. And that's most people who knew him previously would say the same thing.
Except for the people that he didn't
got
pay
fucked
their
over
bills,
by.
right?
Right.
But except for all the people that had to sue him because he didn't pay their bills, and then end up, he's like, well, I'll give you $50,000, and that's more than, it's not as much as the $5 million I owe you, but it's $50,000 more than you're going to get. And that's a
scumbag businessman, and I've seen that before. The level of darkness in him goes beyond that. I could name 25 guys like that who in other areas of their life are decent human beings and are soulful and whatnot. They just think there's a rule in business. I can do what I can do. His, as we all know, goes to a darker place.
I'm sure you've seen the movie A Face in the Crowd, right?
Yes.
So A Face in the Crowd, a classic film, Ilya Kazan, Bud Schulberg wrote it. And it is, it's the movie they made before they made, it's a movie they made right after they won all these Oscars for On the Waterfront. And it's about a singer named Lonesome Rhodes, played by Andy Griffith. And he becomes this incredibly powerful, charming demagogue. Now, they didn't take it all the way through. He becomes an advisor to presidents, not a presidential candidate himself. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of lonesome roads in Donald Trump, a guy who was having fun and enjoyed the limelight. And at the end of the day, things took a darker turn, and he didn't have anyone around him that he trusted or believed in or that he listened to. And I see a lot of resonance in that film. If you or your
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Check it out. It's eerie. Parts of it are eerie. How resonant they are with today.
Let's talk a little bit about the state of CNN. Obviously, we're not going to get into anything. Both you and I are both think the world of both Chris Licht and Jeff Zucker, and they're both friends of mine. So I'm not interested in any of the drama there. But I'd love to get your take on, where do you go with CNN? CNN is one of the great, I'm a marketer, I'm a branding guy. It's one of the great marketing, branding, discussion points in the world today. If you're going to line it, where do you go with it? And all the obvious stuff, and you got MS to the left, and you got Fox to the right, and do people want straight news anymore? And all the things we go on. I put you now, you are the czar of CNN. You're responsible for more than 4 to 6 on Sunday mornings, and Amy Antelos decides she's retiring in 5 years, and you take her job. What would you do with CNN?
I mean, I think what Amy and Virginia and Eric and David are doing right now is exactly right, which is just focus on the journalism. Just focus on the journalism. Let's not have any drama. We don't need to be in the headlines. And there's such good journalism being done day in, day out. We are not trying to preach to an ideological base. That is not our business model. Our model is to be news and provide interesting interviews with policymakers and people in public life. And, we have Clarissa Ward abroad covering wars and Fred Pleitgen and others in Ukraine. And I mean, we just have some of the best reporters in the business. Shimon Prokopez just was awarded a Peabody for his incredible coverage of Uvalde and the aftermath of Uvalde, where he was basically the mayor of the victims and their families of that shooting. He was their representative more so than any politician or public official or policeman or lawyer. And that is what I think we should be doing. As much as possible, we need to be the voice. We need to be the voices for the public, demanding answers, whether we are demanding answers of the president or the White House in general, or the Congress, whatever. And just like get the ideology away, get the partisanship away, just focus on the job. And I think that's what we're doing. And I would just say, keep doing it.
Yeah. And the $1 million question, obviously, because it is a business, is there enough of an appetite for that? Whereas because we can get bespoke media now, because I can watch it the way I want it, not necessarily. And
right.
Is there the big question, and I don't have the answer to this, because in an ideal world, what you guys are doing and going for is what I would want, and I think what any decent soul would want. And the big question is, from a market point of view, where will the market come out on that? And that because we have trained people to get, you think about the Trump indictment the other day, and you go, okay, if I want to hear about the government weaponizing against, Trump, right, I can hear that. And if I want to hear about really the way they're taking him down, and I can kind of get a little glee in that, I know where to go for right. that. And is the audience there? And this is a TBD for exactly what you described: straight journalism, and here's where it is, and there's where we go.
I think there is. I think, if you look, I'm not somebody, just to be completely candid, I'm not somebody who focuses on the numbers a great deal. They email them out every day. I'm not on
You're
that
smart.
email list.
You're smart. Every time I've had a show, I've done that, and I've gotten me in trouble. So yeah, you're a smart man.
No,
smarter than me.
You get obsessed, and it's just you get obsessed, and it's long-term trends.
Looking at quarter hours and minute by minutes. It's actually insane when you think about it, minute by minute.
Well, also, I happen to be something of a Nielsen truther, but we can talk about that off camera sometime, about how much I actually believe these surveys when it comes to the small sample size of cable news versus network. That said, so I want to just hit that point. I want to hit that point for a second.
Do you know that in New York City, if you want to know people over 75,000 plus household, which is still a lot of money, but it's that's a big scope of New York City, that there are 6 Nielsen boxes that define in New York City what people think about that. Yeah, there's six people. Somebody gets up to take a shit, and the whole world changes. It's just amazing, isn't it?
The technology exists.
It does, to show where every viewer is.
And I think people are just terrified to find out
of the truth.
I think people just don't know. But the technology exists to find out what every TV that is on is watching, including ones, by the way. We always get shit, CNN does, for it's just a airport visit. There's no Nielsen boxes at the airport.
Yeah,
there's no, but the people are watching, but there's no Nielsen.
There's nothing there. There's nothing there. Yeah.
And then waiting rooms, bars, none of that is included in Nielsen. None of it. But in any case, the technology's there if they want to find out. But I think everybody's terrified.
They're terrified because the emperor's clothes come off. Absolutely.
That said, my understanding is that our ratings are going back up, which is great. And I do think that the audience is there. I think that the strategy has to be, and I think that this is what the current owners, Zaslav and what the current management of CNN think. The strategy has to be: we're not just competing with Fox and MS, and let's be honest, we're not really competing with Fox, generally.
Right? Not at all.
But we're competing with Shark Week, and we're competing with anything that's on TV, and we just have to convince people that our programming and our news programming is worth changing the channel from National Geographic or from HBO or from Netflix. We have to be on their radar for everything, and that means we have to be all over social media, not just Twitter and Facebook, but TikTok and Snapchat and everywhere where the kids are. And where I don't think mainstream media is doing a very good job. No. And we just have to be out there saying, we're here. Take a look. Here's some good stuff.
So within this, what I agree with is the right positioning, or the positioning that CNN can own. You were very outspoken about the Trump town hall. So where did CNN go wrong there?
I actually didn't say anything about the Trump town hall.
You didn't? Why did I think I read you talking about, or it must have been people heard or so. Somehow I took that away. So my mistake. I apologize.
No, it's fine. It's just my basic take on the Trump town hall is that it's a conversation. The conversation begins with, do you think that the leading Republican presidential candidate should get a town hall? I mean, let's start with that.
Which I think so. My problem was don't stack the audience. Don't make it a show. Don't put a laugh track on it. I mean, so does it deserve an audience? Yes. Our
audiences for town halls always have been Republican primary and caucus voters, and for Democratic town halls, Democratic primary and caucus voters. So we didn't stack it with Trump people. Those were New Hampshire Republicans,
right.
People that were going to vote in the New Hampshire primary. And there were people I wasn't there, but my understanding is that there were people in the audience that were not hooting and hollering, but obviously we heard the hooting and hollering. I think the biggest lesson that I learned personally from the town hall is, should it be live or should it be taped? Because Fox did one with him maybe like a week or so later, and it was taped. They did it on tape. And that might be the solution when it comes to somebody that is so unpredictable and says.
But then you're setting yourself up for the obvious criticism. Oh, you guys are going to edit out. Or you're going to, so that leads to a whole other set of slippery slope problems.
Well, I mean, I guess the question then is, what would anybody have done differently? Because
I would have done it again. I had thought the only critique I had as a viewer was, oh my God, somehow there was a deal made that the audience was going to be a little bit friendlier than one would have anticipated. But to your point, you say, no, we stack the audience exactly as we stack it, with New Hampshire voters, some independents, some diehard Republicans, and that's just what happened. So I don't think you could have done it any differently if the audience was that composition.
He won the New Hampshire primary in 2016. He, I think, was within 2,000 votes, I might be wrong, of winning New Hampshire in 2016. He lost it handily in 2020. But that is a purple state that has a very strong Republican Party tradition, and the people in the audience are reflective of the Republican Party. Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about the adulation of Donald Trump by a sizable chunk of the Republican Party. So I would posit that what people who saw that didn't like was not what CNN did. I would posit that is what is a reality that a lot of people are uncomfortable with, which is that Donald Trump is capable of mocking a woman who accused him and won in court of sexual assault, and is cheered, and people laugh. And I don't like it, but that is a percentage of the country. And I get that people didn't like it, but again, I would posit that what they're reacting to is not CNN. What they're reacting to is the fact that a lot of Republicans love this guy, and even when he is, arguably defaming, and she's now added to her complaint against him, arguably defaming a woman who credibly accused him of sexual assault, according to a jury of his peers. I mean, that's the counter argument.
What would it take? You did a great town hall with Nikki Haley not too far after. Very different, obviously, different candidate and different decorum. What would it take at this point for somebody else to break through, or is that just not possible?
Even if somebody,
what would it take?
Possible.
What would it take for them? Forget Trump imploding and forget Trump doing some plea deal where he doesn't run or he gets sick, or save Trump doesn't do any more self-destruction than he's done. What would it take for a Nikki Haley, for a Tim Scott, for a Glenn Youngkin, somebody that's not even in the role, to a DeSantis? Because I keep saying that the mistake they're making, you can't out-Trump Trump. And DeSantis is just Trump 2.0, but not better. It's like a new product. If you want somebody to try a new product, you've got to give them a different set of benefits. You can't just come in with the same thing. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think that you have to take him head on and explain to the American people, or rather to explain to Republican voters why voting for him is a mistake. And it has to be more than just he's a loser,
Right.
He led to losses in 2018, 2020, and 2022. That is a compelling argument, but
It is a compelling argument, but it needs to be more than that. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, you have to take him head on, and then you have to provide your alternative view of the kind of governance you want, and why they should vote for you. And I feel like they're all kind of just testing their messages now.
Yeah.
But if we have, a debate, and I guess the first one is in August with Fox, if we have a debate and it's a bunch of people just attacking the liberal media and Joe Biden and saying Donald Trump was set up or whatever, like, I don't know what that does. You can't, in other words, all of his competitors have to go on that stage saying, I want to be president, not I want to be Donald Trump's vice president. And
yes, that's
if
very
they
well
actually
put.
make that argument, if they make that argument, I think he could break through. I don't know that he can. I don't know that having 10 candidates running against him will help when it comes time to vote. But in terms of August, September, October, November, December, 5 months of debates before the first vote is cast in Iowa, I think it could be. I think they could take him down. He's not at 95%. I mean, he's at, what is he, like in the 40s or something? I mean, he's beatable, I think.
Yes,
but that doesn't mean that he will be. I mean, I still think the good money is on him being the nominee, but I do think he's beatable. Absolutely.
Do you ever, I ask this of politicians when I have Adam Schiff on or Jamie Raskin, any politician, I always go, do you ever talk to these Republicans off camera? And because we see the way they get up there, we see these are not dumb people, but we see obviously the way they follow like lemmings. And do you ever off camera say, guys, come on, like, do you ever get to have these conversations with the people who are touting the Trump's ridiculousness and in such a submissive, sheep-like way? Do you ever get to say, guys, come on, you know the difference between right and wrong. You know this.
I think yes. And sometimes it will acknowledge it, and sometimes they will not. It's also the conversations you have with people that worked for Trump, conservative Republicans who worked for him, while they were working for him at the White House, and while they were trying to get at steering the ship correctly, steering the ship towards stability. I mean, that's why General John Kelly and McMaster and Mattis and Nikki Haley.
That was the rationale for staying there. Yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to make it work, right? I mean, and that didn't mean that they didn't see what was in front of them, but they didn't acknowledge it at the time, but they did. By the way, we haven't talked about my novel in a little bit, but just so you know, in All the Demons Are Here, one of the things that I tried to explore is what makes a demagogue a demagogue. Like, how does it happen? And Evel Knievel is the protagonist for that, because in the book he basically runs for president. He launches a presidential campaign, and he has followers, people who love him because of his celebrity, love him because of his outspokenness, and a lot of people who have legitimate grievances with the government, and a lot of people who have illegitimate grievances with the government. And I tried to get into it that way because of what we have all been through, especially on January 6th, but separately as well, because it's too simplistic to say, all these people are lemmings. And I'm not talking about what you're talking about with the politicians, but I'm talking about the public. All these people are lemmings. They don't know any better, blah, blah, blah. There are reasons. There are real and legitimate reasons why politicians like Donald Trump, like Evel Knievel in my fiction, attract followers. And some of it is they need something to believe in a world where they've lost hope.
When you're writing a book like this, when you're writing All the Demons Are Here, who are you writing it for? Are you writing it for yourself, or do you have a reader in mind? Do you have when you're writing and it's you and the page and you and the typewriter, although we don't use typewriters anymore. Who's in your mind as you're writing it?
I picture just a fictitious reader out there, and I'm just trying to get them to turn the page. I'm just trying to get them to want to know what happens next. So what happened, and be surprised. And then I'll go back on the second draft and I'll add stuff that is more surprising than what I put in there on the first draft. I know we're in a world where competition for attention is intense. People, don't even buy books anymore. They download them on their phone, or they don't even read books anymore. They're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. They're reading something that requires much less of them. So I am thinking, okay, how do I get this person invested in the characters and caring so much that they are going to stick with me? Because I don't take it for granted. I don't take it for granted that anybody will buy the book, but I certainly don't take it for granted that anybody will finish the book because of the intense competition we have right now for everybody's attention, which you must feel all the time at your anchor desk and when you're on Morning Joe or whatever. Like, it's not people are just like this all the time, right? On their phones, on their remote controls, they're just like this. So how do I grab them?
How old are your kids?
13 and 15.
So what I have a 16 and a 19-year-old. And the reason I ask is just social media is just such a brutal, I have two girls and all day long they're on Instagram and then this and then this. Yep. And how do you manage, we can't manage our kids. That's the wrong set of words. How do you handle the ills of social media and your kids and kind of do everything you can to kind of help them navigate that?
Well, I have some blockers on I have a son and a daughter. So I have some blockers on the son's stuff because I don't want all that warped, crazy porno shit.
Which is doing so much too much damage to kids. It's incredible what that is doing to young people. Look, our first exposition was, I remember stealing my dad's Playboy, and that's about as racy as it got. And they're seeing all these deviant, extreme versions of sexuality that warp them. I mean, it's horrible. Yeah,
a Playboy is sweet and innocent compared to the crazy crap out there. So I have blockers on his. I don't have blockers on Alice's because she's 15 going on 24, and I got one of those. Yeah, and he's 13, so it's a little different. But also we just are constantly talking about what they see on social media and just their lives, and so far so good. But I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like we're pretty fortunate. I mean, we've done stories about the perils of social media and bullying and that sort of thing. And, I can't say that I know everything that's going on with my kids' lives, but we know a lot. We're really in there with them. And so hopefully we know more than most.
Do your kids ever comment on your day job and things that they hear or things that you say, or they're a little on the younger side, particularly the 13-year-old, but I'm curious.
I think they're more amused when I become a meme on TikTok or something,
right?
Or, when I said after the debate that was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire
inside of a turd. Yeah, that was one of the great lines of all time. That was amazing.
And I didn't say turd, but yes.
I know. I'm paraphrasing. Right.
But that became I think a lot of people use that to describe bad dates or whatever now on TikTok and stuff. So it amuses them, but I don't think they're particularly impressed. I think my daughter just went to rowing camp. She rows crew, and she said something about she got to the college where the camp was and all the TVs were on CNN. She just sent that to the family group chat. And I said, "Oh, that's so funny." I was on air at the time. Do you want me to say hi? I'll say hi to you from TV. She goes, no, I'm not watching.
That's what kids are supposed to do. All right, final question. Right. I asked this everybody. This show is all about branding and people's personal brands and everything. What's the Jake Tapper brand? And you can't say the answer is, I don't believe in that, because we have to go on the premise that if a brand is a set of values, in some shape or form, we're all brand. If you have a Facebook page, you're a brand. So what's the Jake Tapper brand?
I hope it is an honest anchor, and then who also an honest anchor who also has this kind of fun side, with the books and going on Kimmel or whatever. But like, I guess the main part would be an honest anchor. I would hope that's what it is.
I would say it's an honest anchor whose humanity shows. It doesn't mean you're you're leaning in one way, but you get a person. It's somebody who's delivering the news, who's feeling it at the same time, just as a human. And you're not trying to shift people's views, but to me, what I love about your talent is, yes, you're a straight journalist, and your journalism credentials speak for themselves. There's a humanity that shows through that does not always show through, or it's very, very curated. Yours is not.
That's really kind. I really appreciate that. That's like one of the nicest things anybody's ever said to me. So I'm a little taken aback, Donny. So thank you so much.
Well, on that note, the book is All the Demons Are Here. It's been out 2 days, and already it's selling off the shelves and off Amazon. There it is, by Jake Tapper. The third, it will, I'm sure, be a New York Times bestseller by the time this is airing, just on the pre-sales on Amazon. Hey, this was a real privilege. I really appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Now how busy you are.
Thanks, Donny. I owe you one, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.